Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling, award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to the 51st state, and around the globe. Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take on video platforms and all sorts of other places. Everywhere. And listen, if you like what you hear, if you think somebody else needs to hear it, pass this link on, would you? Appreciate it a bunch. And hit that like and hit that subscribe. Helps us out immensely. Will help us with upcoming interviews and getting certain people that I think you'll really like to hear to come on the channel. And it's much appreciated, and I appreciate you listening. All right. So, did lots of research over the last 4 or 5 days since the last show. In that show, I gave you kind of a broad overview of the different types of real estate and the different locations of real estate. And I told you I'm going to be going over all of them over the coming shows. Well, this is the next show in that line. It's Real Estate United States Part 2. And today we're going to be covering townhomes and condos in every region of the United States and single-family homes in every region of the United States. Not rural single-family homes or small towns, but metropolitan areas, suburban areas, and shall we say ex-urban areas, that band of not real dense development, but certainly more urban type development that rings metropolitan areas and in some cases extends 100, 200 miles out from the city center. If you have a big enough metropolitan area like New York or Tampa, Florida, or Houston, Texas. I'm going to give you a little ranch story here. It'll be very brief. A couple of ranch pictures for you. We actually got a little moisture. Wow. 3 inches of snow. And believe it or not, as pathetic as that is, that's the second or third most snow we have had all winter. This is dry bone out here in the West. But anything is helpful, and we are thankful for it. Supposedly, a few more inches are coming in over the course of the next week, and at this point, every inch of snow, even though it's only 1/10 of an inch of water, is a blessing. So a couple of pictures of green and white kaleidoscope. You know, one of the things in this land of extremes out here in the Rockies is that one day it can be 70 and the next day it can be 10 degrees. And it can happen in hours. So the snow that fell over the last day is literally, and this is kind of midday on Saturday, a day or two late after I wanted to get this show out, but a lot of research went into it. Yeah, it's noon, and guess what? Most of the snow is gone. But it does make things green up kind of nicely. And green is something we haven't seen for quite a while out here, and I don't think we're going to see too much of this summer. So that's your very brief rant story for today. More in the next show. And enjoy the pictures, by the way. I shot a few for you. Our quote today. You know, this is really apropos because we're going to talk a little bit about the Iran conflict, the Iran war. No, as always, I'm not bringing you the blow by blow and blah, blah, blah. This is a much bigger picture. This is the 4D chessboard spread globally because this conflict, if you will, is going to have ramifications that are unknown but can go many different directions, some of them really good and some of them not so much. So, the quote, I think, is from Thomas Paine today. I think it's like right on point for where we are right now. in this global mix and mess, because Iran is not the only thing. It's the thing in the news, but it's not the only thing going on, folks, not even close. And this is from Thomas Paine. If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, that my children may have peace. Think about that. That is the reason we are in Iran. Now, you may like Trump, you may not. You may be disappointed in Trump. You may think he's doing exactly the right thing. But based on 47 years of history, based on their religious ideology, which is basically they don't get to go to heaven and get their 72 virgins or whatever their deal is, unless the world comes to an end, it doesn't take a lot to lean toward the fact that the muftas in the Iranian government and the IRGC, their terror arm, and all their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas and the Iraqi militias, etc., it doesn't take much to know that if they have a weapon, they will use it. You can see it happening right now, even on lamestream media, who, of course, loves to show it because, it's Trump derangement syndrome. So whatever you may think of Trump, or whatever you may think of this conflict, or whatever you may think of the fact that you're paying another $1.75, whatever it is, at the gas pump for a brief period of time, think about that quote from Thomas Paine, who was really the instigator of the American Revolution and as close to being one of the founders as you could possibly be without sitting at that table in Philadelphia and signing your death warrant by putting your signature, affixing your signature to the Declaration of Independence. If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child may have peace. Think about that. Sometimes, as ugly as it is, a few pounds of prevention is worth tons of cure. Now, over there in Iran, no, the Straits of Hormuz are not open. You've heard Trump say various conflicting things. And look, one of the things that I try and be is I try and be pragmatic. Okay, it's kind of my nature. And pragmatically speaking, although the war has been waged with a really systematic, an enviable systematic pounding by the United States and Israel, I sense some mistakes. And you know what? No conflict, no interaction between countries or even between human beings, just think about your family, happens without error. Unintended, but error exists because humans are not perfect. And one of the big picture things, or several of the big picture things that I see that concern me, is that over the last few days, we've had we've lost a number of aircraft. It's really the first time, although aircraft have been clipped in the last week or two, but they've made it back to base. It's really the first time in this conflict, which is now going into its sixth week, that we have had a plane downed and some other near misses. And only the first time, I think it was 3 occasions last week, that fighter jets got clipped by missiles but made it back to base. So that tells me that from the time the war started to now, something has changed with the Iranians. And what's changed is they now have better, and it appears more than they originally had, anti-aircraft missiles. Let me give you another piece to this puzzle on the chessboard. Chinese tankers, although not totally free to come and go, have been coming and going from Iran carrying crude. But there's also been Chinese cargo ships. Russia has absolutely, positively been aiding Iranians with precise satellite targeting. Think about what's happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's been precise hits on gas and oil infrastructures in the other Gulf states. There's been precise hits on American bases. We had an AWACS that was taken out on the ground. We've had several tankers taken out on the ground. We've had one of our 14 key radar installations taken out. Now, these are precise. Remember, these missiles are coming from Iran, which only has 2 satellites and, no space building left because it's been taken down. So their coordinates, which you got to program into a missile for it to hit its target, is coming from somewhere. Now, maybe it's coming partially from China, but I think it's coming primarily from Russia. So it concerns me that if you're going to fight a war, you fight to win. And that means nothing is off the table. Now, I don't care if it's geopolitical, if it's between nations, if it's between regions, or for that matter, if it's between people. Okay? A war is fought to win. Why Chinese tankers are still steaming? Why Chinese cargo ships are being allowed to unload? Because you know that those boxes aren't carrying just beans and rice, folks. And why Russia has not been severely warned as to targeting or assisting the Iranians in targeting, particularly since we have the leverage of Ukraine over Russia, is it makes me think. It makes me think. And it makes me think about the relative balance of power in the world between the 3 superpowers, which will get us into the next little leg of this Iranian-based discussion. One of the things which I think is definitely happening. Oh, let me stop. Here's a couple other things that concern me. So you now have Iran being flooded by Iraqi proxy militia, foreign troops coming into Iran to assist the IRGC, which has been pounded not totally into oblivion, but shall we say, they've taken a beating. And you have troops from, believe it or not, Afghanistan, not troops, but militia. Once again, IRGC proxies coming into Iran to try and suppress the population and maintain control. As always, on the rightsideradio.com has all sorts of videos from all sorts of sources around the world for you to take a look at. It's under World War III kinetic. It's under World War III economic. It's under the audio bar. And I urge you to watch some of those videos from Israel, from Britain, they're from everywhere. There's almost none that are from the United States because, lamestream media. One of the things you'll notice in those videos is that these terrorists, these fighters, foreign fighters that Iran is bringing into Iran to suppress their population and to maintain control, they're massing at the borders when they come across. I mean, there's a couple of shots where there must be a mile, 4 or 5 deep, of cars and pickup trucks with guns and people. And why aren't they getting taken out right there? I don't understand that. You have the enemy massed at a border. The same thing happened with ISIS, with Barry Obama back in 2012. ISIS had not yet really started its campaign of terror. They were massed at the Syria-Iraq border. And his generals told him, let's take him out, and he didn't. And of course, you know what happened. I don't understand why these large concentrations of Iranian proxies have not been taken out. The Kurds The Iraqi Kurds, although they are separatist, they're not 100% for Iran. They are 100% for their own Kurdistan, which would involve part of Iran's lands, not a whole bunch, and part of their lands in Iraq. They're ready to fight. They were at the border. Trump turned them around. At the least, why not unleash the Kurds, who are great fighters and have long been allies of the United States, unleash them on these proxy groups? I don't understand how these chess pieces are being played or moved or what the reason is, but those kind of things concern me. If you're going to fight a war, you embargo Iran, Chinese ships don't come in and Chinese ships don't come out, and Russia is made to understand through back channels exactly what we will do to help Ukraine destroy Russian infrastructure if there's any more targeting going on. I mean, this is kind of basic stuff to me. But since this is continuing, obviously, this is not happening. So it's something for us all to think about, because obviously there are things happening behind the scenes that none of us know. These are the third level of the 4D chess. I'm not privy to the fourth level at all. One of the things which is occurring, though, is that this is definitely solidifying, cementing the Fortress America, basically the Western Hemisphere, that I've told you that I am sure is part of the long-term plan, and I think is part of a deal with Russia and China. I don't know. But if you take the oil and the other assets of Venezuela and Argentina and, Canada and Greenland and Mexico, it seems that on the one hand, we are fighting in Iran to make sure that Fortress America can't be attacked in any way, shape, or form, particularly by nuclear weapons on long-range ballistic missiles in the future, while at the same time we are fortifying Fortress America. I mean, think about this really, really, really big picture, long-term chess, 4D chess. All right. Second thing I want to talk about before we get into real estate, the SAVE Act. Wow. I mean, the rhinos in the Senate continue to bog down the SAVE Act, which is pretty simple. Like, you have to be a United States citizen, registered to vote, and you have to show picture ID. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. I don't know what's wrong with these people, but they all need to go. As far as I'm concerned, they are treacherous. Treacherous. I mean, you expect this from Democratic communists. You don't expect it from supposed Republican conservatives. Get on the horn, write an email to your senator. I don't care if you're in a blue state. I don't care if they're, as bad as Elizabeth Warren, and tell them you want the SAVE Act passed. It can't hurt. The second thing is Trump just signed a number of executive orders which have to do with election integrity. And it has to do with voter rolls, and you can't get a mail-in ballot unless you are a certified voter. You can't be a certified voter unless you're a United States citizen. I'm not going to go into the details. The articles are on the ontherightsideradio.com website under election fraud. And I suggest you read them, because one of these cases, and they all blend together, folks, because it has to do with immigration and illegal immigration and birthright citizenship. One of these cases is now before the Supreme Court, has to do with birthright citizenship. And there's a lot of background on that. It goes back to 1898. And the left is arguing that the Constitution says, if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen. But if you read the Constitution carefully, it's not quite that cut and dried. If you are legally in the United States and give birth, that child is an American citizen. That is really the reading of both precedent in terms of law and the Constitution. I don't know where SCOTUS is going to come down on this, but this is pretty key. Did you know that there's 500 different Chinese organizations who work in concert with NGOs, which the left loves to fund with our tax money, that have a literally birth mother business going? I mean, not only are they undermining America and Western civilization and promoting all sorts of things which are good for China and not for the United States, good for the third world, not for the United States. But we're paying them to do it. They're using our tax dollars. And that's just one example of how this system has been abused. I mean, it's a whole, it's called birth tourism, where the Chinese get a Chinese gal who's about to give birth. She comes over here. The NGOs get all sorts of money, some of it paid by the U.S. taxpayers. She gives birth. That kid is now an American citizen. Then she goes back to China with an American citizen baby, who I'm sure at some point in time will be coming to America to do X, Y, and Z. Who knows what that is? These are really big deals. These election integrity orders, the fact that the friggin' rhinos in the Senate can't get the SAVE Act passed. This is basic. This is fundamental to our republic continuing as it is. And you need to get on the horn, and you need to support candidates. Under the elections donations tab on the website, on the rightsideradio.com, there's 29x, 35x, 15x multipliers for every dollar you put in. That's pretty damn good bang for your buck, okay? You don't have to give, $3,500. You can put in $100, and guess what? It's $3,500 that's going to the campaigns. Or $10 is $350. Get involved. Get off your butt. And no matter what you think of the war in Iran, or whether or not you are disappointed in Trump, or whether or not you are taking, in my view, a short-sighted view of what is really trying to be accomplished here. And yes, I know the arguments, Israel talked us into it, all that, whatever. Okay. The fact that Israel has certain points that it wants to score, and we have points that we want to score, and some of those points align and some of them don't, is irrelevant. We didn't ask questions when Russia was our ally after Germany attacked it in World War II, did we? No. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Think big picture, not short term. All right, let's get into real estate, shall we? First of all, I'm going to start with, believe it or not, condos and townhomes, because that is part of the residential real estate market. And by the way, the next show is going to be on rural, small pieces of land and rural housing, which I know many of you are interested in. And the show after that is going to be on larger land in various regions of the United States, ag, ranch, et cetera, et cetera. And the very final show will be on commercial properties, both rural, or shall we say, smaller towns, and metropolitan areas. So that's kind of the order that we're going to go into. And I'm going to try and do these shows. I think it's been 4 or 5 days since I did the last one. I wanted to get it out every 2 or 3, but it is what it is. And in the next 2 or 3 days, I might even do one tomorrow on Easter, will be the next one, which will be the rural lands and rural housing. But townhomes and condos are a huge and growing segment of the housing market. To give you an idea, in the I got so many facts here, boy, oh boy. I mean, I spent many, many, many hours researching this and kind of coupling it with my experience to boot. So number one, let's talk big picture. The rental market is crumbling a little bit. Rental rates are coming down. And that is because there's more competition between owners who have places that they can rent, supply and demand. In addition, the vacation rental market, particularly now with, high oil prices, is kind of cratering, as is the travel market. So you have inventory being added, townhome, condo, single family, to markets around the United States because of lowered rental income to landlords. And number two, a hell of a lot less business on the vacation rental side to those people who own vacation rentals. For this information, by the way, this is townhomes and condos. I used the Urban Land Institute, the National Association of Realtors, the Census Bureau, and several other sites. I mean, a lot of research went in. Okay. Townhomes and condos, believe it or not, have remained relatively, underline that word, relatively strong in metro or metro suburban areas in most places, most regions of the country. Number one, they have a lower entry price. So people who want to buy a new home or have to buy a home or first-time home buyers, a lower entry price obviously is dramatic. Dramatic. The first-time home buyer used to be 29 years of age in 1989. They are now 40 years of age. That's a huge demographic swing, folks. The median income used to be $36,000 back in those days. And now, basically, to get into a basic medium-priced dwelling of any type is $96,000 and change. Those are huge swings, huge differences. And that's part of what's driving this townhome and condo market. Between townhomes and condos, townhomes are much more popular because they have much more privacy. Many of them have attached or detached carports, 1 or 2 car garages, which condos don't have. There seems to be a little bit less seem to be less restrictions and less cost in homeowners associations for townhomes and not condos. And I want to emphasize, remember, real estate is general, it's regional, it's city specific, and you know what? It's very localized, even by zip code. Zip code is probably the best way to look at real estate in the United States. It's the best component of demographics, income, and housing types there is. And I'll tell you a little bit about a app that you can get. It's called the Reventure app. I ought to be getting paid by this guy. One of his videos is on the site, by the way, under real estate. And everything I'm talking about is under real estate or under the audio bar. You can see these videos and graphs and all this stuff for yourself. I urge you to do so because I can't cover all the details. But real estate is localized. It is urban. It is regional, and it is national. So I'm talking bigger pictures here in terms of region and metropolitan areas. There's an increasing trend to attached housing for all the reasons that we just went over. Basically, it goes back to land costs, right? A single-family detached home requires more land than a townhome. Basically, a single-family attached home is typically, once again, every project's different, 3 to 4 density units per acre, right? Basically 10,000 square foot lots. A townhome, however, depending upon its size, the luxury, the area, the whole 9 yards, is anywhere from 4 to 10 units per acre. And what does that mean? That means the land cost is much lower. The construction costs, yes, there's some savings due to common walls and all that kind of stuff, but the The big deal is land cost between single family and condo townhome attached residential units. So in the Northeast, and each area is different. See, it's really interesting. And this is why real estate is localized. In the Northeast, your typical condo or townhome is 12 to 1,600 feet. On the West Coast, 13 to 1,700 feet with garages, right? Midwest, 1,600 to 2,000 feet, normally has bigger family areas and larger kitchens. In the Sun Belt, 1,800 to 2,200 square feet, a lot of space given to sun-type rooms and that type of thing you wouldn't find in northern climates. Prices vary widely across the United States, but just to give you a feel on a regional basis. In Seattle, 650 to 950,000 average price attached unit. San Francisco, well, it's on its own world out there, 900,000 to 1.4 million. Austin, Texas, which by the way is one of the softest markets in the United States, 420,000 to 650,000. Atlanta, Georgia, 350,000 to 550,000. Dallas, Texas, 320,000 to 500,000. The Northeast really depends on your localized area and what kind of ridiculous regulations your particular township has relative to the township next door to you. Because the Northeast has killed itself with regulations and greatly increased the cost of land, which is a major component of the cost of housing. In the urban areas, what people are looking for is access to transit, right? These people aren't really drivers of cars. They want access to a bus system or a rail system or a high-speed rail system. They want to get around the city quickly and easily. They want walkable neighborhoods, right? Within the sphere of their condo or their condo apartment or their townhome, they can walk to the health club. They can walk to the coffee shop. They can walk to entertainment. They can walk to the grocery store. That is what urban type buyers are looking for. And in nice areas, they want rooftop terraces, okay, if you happen to have a townhome. In suburban areas, it's a little bit different, the wish list, right? This is the localized nature of real estate. Suburban areas are looking for because it's more family oriented. Larger kitchens and living areas. They want two-car garages, attached or detached. They want, shall we say, family-friendly floor plans. And they want community amenities because you got to keep the kids happy, right? Your best markets right now for condos and townhomes in the United States are, believe it or not, Austin, Texas, despite the fact that it's one of the down markets in the United States, Round Rock, Texas, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Believe it or not, in the midst of the disaster, which is the overall Florida housing market, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida, and Salt Lake City, Utah. Those are your best attached condo or townhome markets in the United States right now. That gives you a little feel. Now, I have an inkling that a lot of my audience, I mean, if my audience on this show is with all the different platforms, 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever it is, I have a feeling that it is a minority that is interested in townhomes or condos. But to understand real estate, you have to understand every component of a real estate market because they are all different, but they are all interrelated. Single family homes, which I know many of you are probably interested in. First of all, to give you an idea what's happening in the overall marketplace, interest rates are now up to 6.47%, and that's with perfect credit, lots of down payment, you name it. They can go higher than that. Your affordability index is at the lowest it has ever been. That's ever. 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 There's a huge disconnect between buyers and sellers, and there's a number of reasons for this. Buyers are obviously looking for a deal, and they're looking for something they can afford, both in terms of monthly payments and an overall price. Sellers, on the other hand, are looking, they have in their mind a fixed profit. And many of them are in their homes at lower interest rates, 2.5, 3, 3.5. And they know that unless they get enough money out of their house, they can't move somewhere else because they're not going to get 3.5% rate, and they're not going to get a new place for the same price as they bought the old place, even if that purchase was just 5, 6, 7 years ago. So this disconnect between buyers and sellers has resulted in all sorts of problems out there in the market. Number one, there are 600,000 more sellers right now around the United States than there are buyers around the United States. And this is primarily for single-family homes, but overall in real estate. What happens when you have 600,000 more sellers than you do buyers? The price should go down. But if you are a seller and you think your house is worth X, or you think you should have made, umpty-ump percent since you bought it in 2020 or 2019 or whenever you bought it, and you know what you're going to have to spend and the interest rate you're going to suffer if you move, you're not very motivated to sell. And there comes that disconnect again. Okay? It's really interesting to note that every $1,000 price rise, and this applies, by the way, to, we'll call it the attached housing market also, which we just talked about. Every $1,000 price rise in the cost of a home of any type knocks 140,400 households out of the market. Think about that. That's a big number for not too big an increase, right? For every 0.25% rise in interest rates for mortgages, 1.4 million, that's 1.4 million people get knocked out of the market. In other words, they can't afford the product. Think about the overall economic conditions we are in right now and what's happening with the Iran war and the price of oil and interest rates going up and all sorts of things. You can start seeing how this disconnect between buyers and sellers has basically bogged down this market to nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean there's still millions of units being sold, but it is a trickle compared to previous year's torrents. New homes, this is a home builder built new homes, never been lived in before. And these months are a little bit off because that was the only stats that were out there. In December and January, December 2025 and January 2026, in the Northeast, 710,000 new homes were sold. Midwest, 1.81 million. Excuse me. 71,000 new homes were sold in the Northeast. I had an extra decimal point in here, or in the wrong place. In the Midwest, 181,000 new homes in those 2 months. In the South, 756,000 new homes in those 2 months, December and January. And in the West, 202,000 new homes. Now remember, home builders have slashed their prices, some of them by anywhere from 11 to 22%. That's a big drop. They're not making a dime. They're just moving inventory. They're eating up their land, which is costing them money to hold. In addition, they're buying down rates for people. It may not be for the duration of the mortgage. It may only be for the first 3 years. They buy the rate down for you to 4%, but, at the end of the 3 years, it's going to be what it's going to be. And it's kind of like playing Russian roulette with your house. Not pleasant. Existing home sales, and once again, this is a little bit off because this is January 2026 and February 2026 numbers. Existing home sales in the Northeast were 810,000. Remember, 71,000 to 810,000. In the Midwest, 1,770,000 residential units. Remember, new construction was 181,000 in that region. In the South, 2,410,000 existing units were sold. Remember, 756,000 new homes. In the West, 1,380,000 existing homes. And in the West, 202,000. So you can kind of see that the market is heavily skewed to existing homes. The $97,700, if I was off a little bit on my previous figures, excuse me, median income is a 2021 number. There's no new stats out on it. Gee, I wonder why the government is not telling us what the new stats are. Have any idea? Maybe they forgot? Of course, because, when the government, and I don't care who's in power, when they get up in the morning, the first thing they think about, folks, is how they can help you. You bet. All the metro markets, folks, on single family homes are down 3 to 10% over the last 6 to 12 months. All the metro markets. Existing home sales are down to 2008 levels. In fact, they just dipped below it. 2008 levels. Remember what was going on in 2008? Oh, yeah, the great financial crisis. And a spike in interest rates, I might add. They expect 4.177 million existing units or total housing units to be sold this year. The peak, to put it in perspective for you, was in 2021 and 2022. In 2021, 7 million, and in 2022, it was just under 7 million. Now you can do the math on that, right? 7 million to 4 million. That's a pretty big drop in terms of home sales. 14% to 20%, depends upon the region, depends upon the market, depends upon the product, of the contracts that are being written on homes, both new and existing, are cratering before they get to closing. And there's a million reasons for that. But the bottom line is 14 to 20% of contracts falling out of bed before closing is the highest it's ever been. Highest it's ever been. This is kind of the overview of single family, urban and suburban, and multifamily, urban and suburban sales and market trends for the country. If you get the ReVenture app, just go to the web and just dial in ReVenture and it'll come up. It's about 40 or 50 bucks a month. I'm sorry, I have used it myself. I think it's phenomenal. It's by zip code. It'll tell you every stat you ever want to know. It has graphs. It tells you what the trends are. It's really a hell of an app. I wish I had had it many, many, many years ago. But if you are thinking of moving to a particular area, or you are thinking of selling your home, or you are thinking of buying a home, may I suggest that you invest in a month or 2 months or 3 months or however they kind of have it structured over there of that app. I think it could make or save you a lot of money and put you in the top 1% of knowledgeable real estate buyers and sellers. I think it's the best one out there. There are several. You can always do your own research, but this is quite an app. There's a video on the website, the 10 most stable states, okay? And the 10 most stable states to buy a house in other words, the least volatility in housing prices and costs associated with owning a home or townhome or condo, That video and the graphs are on the real estate section of On the Right Side Radio. There's lots of other considerations. For those of you who haven't read it, I'll give you a shameless plug. You should read my #1 national best-selling business book, Land for Love and Money. Don't go by the title. It talks about real estate of all types. And there's a lot of considerations that you need to give to where you are moving to or where you are buying. The fiscal stability of states, the political drift of states, the view that states have of private property, the tax base. Is there income tax or is there not? Is there high property taxes? Is there not? What are the trends in those areas? There's a lot of consideration that goes into making a long-term strategic move when you are buying real estate of any type, but particularly what is for most people the biggest investment of their lives, which is their house or their condo or their townhome. Do your research. Don't just fall in love with the property in Connecticut or in New York or in California and go, oh, I just got to live there, because you will be sorry that you did. The trends are not pretty at all, or Illinois or Minnesota. Anyway, the 10 most stable states, that video I think will be very interesting for you. We have other videos up, both from last week and this week, which are the 10 safest states, the 10 best market state, or the 8 best market states. It's really interesting that in most of these videos, not all, but in most of these videos, Wyoming, South Dakota, Idaho, and Montana are somewhere in the mix. In some cases, Montana is first. Some cases, Wyoming is first. Some cases, South Dakota is first. But, you know, there's a definite pattern here as to what states and what areas are populating these videos, who are put together by many different outfits. I mean, this is not the Chamber of Commerce doing this. And based on many different factors, which affect the rankings of whatever the gist of the video happens to be. Very interesting to take a look at. And some states will pop up that you didn't think might pop up. West Virginia, Arkansas, Alabama, believe it or not. So do your research, particularly those of you who are footloose and fancy free. You're going to sell your property, or you already have, and the money's in the bank and you're renting. Look around before you decide where to go. Do your research, okay? On the single family research, I use Zillow, Redfin, the St. Louis Federal Reserve, which has a bunch of good housing data on it, and the Reventure app. So I believe those websites are all on the real estate tab on the Right Side Radio. You can do your own research and kind of check out what I'm telling you. The next show, folks, will be on rural housing. This is small towns and housing in rural areas and small land parcels. And by small, I mean, 1 to 5 acres to 40 to 50 acres. That class, which I know lots of people are interested in. And we'll have some videos on where the best places, based on the criteria of each of those videos and researchers, to look for and buy those types of properties. All in all, it is a fascinating time in real estate around the globe, but particularly here in the United States. Hopefully this was helpful and you enjoyed it. Think about those big picture things I mentioned in Iran, because I'm still kind of chewing the mental puzzle up here in my feeble little brain, my one living cell encased in concrete. And we will talk to you in just a few days. In the meantime, you keep the wind at your back. Have a great Easter, by the way. Have a great Easter. May you find lots of Easter eggs filled with all sorts of goodies.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.